Ready for another deep dive? Today we're exploring the always fascinating world of human nature.
Always fascinating and often a bit mysterious too, right?
Absolutely. And to guide us through this intricate landscape, we have Robert Greene's The Concise Laws of Human Nature.
It's a really insightful exploration of those often hidden forces that shape so much of what we think, what we feel, and ultimately how we act.
The book digs deep into this idea of human nature as this kind of underlying current, this force that's been with us since, well, forever.
It's like our evolutionary inheritance. This
Yeah.
intricate wiring developed over millennia continues to influence us in ways we might not always recognize.
So in a way, we're carrying around this ancient programming influencing our everyday actions. Makes you wonder, how much free will do we really have?
It's a great question. We're not just robots acting out predetermined scripts, but understanding these inherent tendencies gives us a starting point. Greene's work acts as a guide, helping us decode those often unconscious patterns.
And those patterns, those tendencies that Greene describes, things like envy, grandiosity, irrationality, they really do seem to trip us up so often.
Absolutely. They're like universal stumbling blocks, and the book really helps us see the difference between rational and irrational behavior. Greene talks about what he calls low-grade irrationality. These are the everyday moods and feelings that sort of fly under the radar, but color our perceptions.
You mean those biases we all have, the ones that can kind of lead us astray without us even realizing it?
Exactly. Confirmation bias, for instance, clinging to information that supports what we already believe, even if it's not entirely accurate. Or the appearance bias, judging people based on superficial first impressions. It's incredibly common.
But it gets even more intense, right?
Yeah.
Greene talks about high-grade irrationality, and this kicks in when we're stressed. It's like everything gets amplified.
Our emotions take over, we become reactive, and that's when those regrettable decisions often happen.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Saying or doing something in the heat of the moment and instantly regretting it.
The key is awareness, recognizing those moments when our buttons are being pushed. If we can just pause, take a breath, create a little space before reacting, that can make a world of difference.
So basically, we need to up our rationality game, become more aware of how our emotions are swaying us.
And Greene offers this really useful three-step process. First, acknowledge those low-grade biases we were talking about. Just recognizing them is a big step.
Okay, so acknowledge those sneaky biases. What's next?
The second step is understanding those reactive states, that high-grade irrationality. Recognizing the pattern is the first step to breaking it.
And finally, we need to strengthen that thinking part of our brains. Give it more muscle to counterbalance those emotions.
Precisely. It's a continuous process. Like any skill, it gets easier with practice.
The more we can observe those patterns in ourselves and others, the better we become at navigating them. This brings us to another fascinating aspect of human nature, narcissism.
Ah, yes, the me generation.
Greene suggests we all possess a certain degree of narcissism.
And again, it's about distinguishing between healthy narcissism, having a strong sense of self, and what he calls deep narcissism. Those individuals are stuck in a cycle of self-absorption. They lack empathy and crave validation. The world really does revolve around them.
Been there, dealt with that. It can be so draining, constantly having to feed their ego.
They can be incredibly charming, but their relationships lack depth. They struggle to truly connect because their focus is always inward. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Greene suggests those of us who aren't stuck in that deep narcissism can actually transform self-love into empathy.
Empathy, now, that's a powerful idea, really stepping into someone else's shoes.
It's not just a nice-to-have quality, it's a skill, and a powerful one for social influence.
So the more empathy we cultivate, the better we become at understanding other people's perspectives.
We become better listeners, we build stronger connections, and that translates into greater influence and persuasion.
So instead of trying to squash our narcissistic tendencies, Greene suggests we can use them as fuel for personal growth. I kind of love that idea.
It's about shifting our attention outwards, moving from self-absorption to genuine empathy. And speaking of understanding others, Greene emphasizes the importance of observation, going beyond just words and learning to read those nonverbal cues.
Almost like becoming a human lie detector, huh?
Well, maybe not quite that dramatic, but learning to see those subtle signals that people give off. It's about establishing a baseline, a sense of how someone typically acts, then noticing those deviations that might hint at their true feelings.
So it's not just looking for individual cues, but seeing how they change and evolve within a particular situation.
Exactly. For example, if someone is usually very animated and then suddenly clams up, that shift might be telling you something important.
It's fascinating how much communication happens below our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
We're constantly transmitting and receiving signals.
By becoming more aware of those signals, we can significantly improve our communication. We can learn to project confidence, build rapport, and really make an impact.
It's like learning a secret language of human interaction. Now, Greene also delves into this concept of character, saying that our character, shaped in those early years, really influences how we act and the patterns we tend to repeat.
He makes this point that people rarely do something just once. Their actions are clues to their character, and those patterns tend to resurface.
So it's about looking for those recurring themes, how someone handles pressure, their adaptability, their patience. Those can reveal a lot about their character.
And he talks about gauging the strength of someone's character. Are they resilient? Can they learn from their mistakes? Or are they constantly blaming others?
He even mentions specific toxic types to watch out for.
People whose patterns can really cause problems in relationships or at work, learning to recognize those types early on can save a lot of heartache.
So it's about protecting ourselves from those whose character traits might lead to conflict. Speaking of conflict, Greene also tackles the concept of desire, that grass is always greener, phenomenon we all know so well.
He suggests this desire for what we lack is deeply ingrained in our psychology. It's like our minds naturally conjure the opposite of what we see.
So if something is forbidden or out of reach, it becomes even more appealing.
Exactly. Scarcity feeds desire. Greene says we can use this to our advantage. He talks about the power of strategic absence and creating an air of mystery.
Are we talking playing hard to get, leaving them wanting more?
In a way, yes, it's about strategically withholding information, sparking curiosity, and making what we offer seem even more valuable.
This could apply to relationships, to branding, even to marketing. It's understanding the psychology behind desire.
Precisely. And then there's the far-sighted perspective that Greene talks about. He suggests we can move beyond the limitations of living in the present moment.
He compares it to climbing a mountain. As we ascend, our vision expands. We see things more clearly.
We detach from those immediate emotions, we consider our options, we think about long-term consequences. It's a powerful way to approach those challenging situations where our judgment might be clouded.
And yet another crucial concept is defensiveness. Greene argues that when people feel their self-image is threatened, they become resistant to influence.
He points to these three universal aspects of how we see ourselves. I am autonomous, I am intelligent, and I am good.
So if someone questions our independence, our smarts, or our moral compass, we instinctively put up walls.
Exactly. To effectively influence someone, we need to create an environment of safety. We need to make them feel good about themselves.
So it's about appealing to those deeper needs for autonomy, for recognition, for feeling good about ourselves.
It's about establishing rapport and mutual respect rather than trying to force our views on someone.
This leads us to one of the most fascinating parts of Greene's work, the concept of the shadow side. This idea that everyone, no matter how well-intentioned, has a darker side.
He calls it the shadow. Those repressed impulses and desires that we often try to keep hidden, even from ourselves.
Those moments when our better angels take a back seat and we act out of character.
Precisely. We all have those moments. Greene argues that we need to acknowledge the shadow, bring those hidden impulses into the light of awareness so we can manage them.
It's about recognizing those signs when we project our own negativity onto others, when we act in ways that surprise even ourselves.
And he suggests ways to integrate the shadow. Things like journaling, dream analysis, finding healthy outlets to express those repressed emotions.
It's a process of becoming more whole, more integrated, more accepting of every part of ourselves.
And this ties into his discussion of envy and grandiosity, two incredibly potent forces in human nature. Envy, as we talked about before, comes from that tendency to compare ourselves to others.
And when those comparisons leave us feeling inadequate, it can trigger resentment, even sabotage.
Greene offers practical advice for managing envy, focusing on our own strengths, celebrating others' successes, finding opportunities to collaborate.
Shifting from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance, realizing there's enough success to go around for everyone.
And then there's grandiosity, that inflated sense of self-importance that can lead to truly bad decisions.
Like Icarus flying too close to the sun and getting burned, right?
Exactly. Greene points out the signs of grandiosity, overconfidence, arrogance, that inability to handle criticism,
So we need to stay grounded, acknowledge our limits, be open to feedback.
and find healthy ways to channel that ambition. Set ambitious goals, take on challenges, but do it in a way that's grounded and productive.
Of course, we can't talk about human nature without addressing love.
Hmm.
Greene argues that love, for all its beauty, is often driven by irrational forces.
We tend to fall in love with our projections, those idealized images of the perfect partner, rather than seeing the real person in front of us.
He calls these projections the anima and animus,
Yeah.
and they often stem from those early childhood experiences.
For example, a man might unconsciously seek a partner who embodies the qualities of his mother, while a woman might be drawn to a man who resembles her father.
And when those projections inevitably collide with reality, that's where the trouble starts. Heartbreak, disappointment, conflict.
Greene gives these really insightful examples, like the elusive woman of perfection or the superior man. These are the archetypes we often chase and love.
So it's about becoming aware of our own projections, learning to see our partners for who they truly are, flaws and all.
It's about embracing the complexity of love, realizing that relationships are a journey, not a destination. Now, Greene's book has also got me thinking about purpose. He says we all have this inherent drive to find purpose, but actually tapping into it means connecting with what really lights us up. He calls these our primal inclinations, those things that fascinate us as children, those activities we could completely lose ourselves in.
It's about rekindling that passion, that sense of excitement that makes us feel truly alive.
Greene talks about setting clear goals, breaking them down into manageable steps, and finding ways to push through those inevitable obstacles.
He also talks about the importance of losing ourselves in our work, finding those activities that challenge us, that make us stretch and grow.
It's about creating a life that truly reflects our values, our passions, our unique talents, making a contribution to the world that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
His insights on group dynamics are also really fascinating. He talks about how profoundly we're influenced by the energy of groups.
He calls it the social force, this kind of invisible energy field that binds groups together.
We've all experienced that, right? Being swept up in the energy of a crowd at a concert or a sporting event.
Greene points out that this social force can be both positive and negative. It can inspire incredible acts of courage and generosity, but also lead to mob mentality and destructive behavior.
He talks about the dangers of conformity, that pressure to perform for the group, that tendency to just go along with the crowd.
To counteract that, we need to cultivate our critical thinking skills, question assumptions, and be willing to stand up for what we believe in, even if it means standing out.
So it's about striking that balance between belonging to a group and maintaining our own sense of individuality. Now, this leads us to the topic of leadership. Greene says effective leadership isn't about wielding power, but understanding those complex dynamics between leaders and followers.
He makes a distinction between authority, which is earned through competence and integrity, and power, which often relies on coercion and control.
So true leaders inspire trust, while those who simply cling to power create resentment and resistance.
Exactly. Greene outlines the key elements of effective leadership: having a clear vision, empowering others, fostering collaboration.
He also stresses the importance of adaptability. A leader needs to adjust their style depending on the situation and inspire their followers to work toward shared goals.
He gives some great examples of historical figures who embodied these leadership qualities. It's really inspiring to see how they navigated challenges, built strong relationships, and made a lasting impact.
Now, Greene also dives into the often misunderstood realm of aggression. He says it's a natural human instinct that can be both positive and negative.
It's not about suppressing aggression, but understanding it and using that energy in a productive way.
So it's about controlled aggression, using that drive to overcome obstacles and achieve goals, but without harming others.
He gives tips for managing our own aggression and dealing with aggression from others, learning to recognize our triggers, practicing assertive communication, setting clear boundaries.
He also talks about channeling that aggressive energy into creative pursuits or physical challenges, finding healthy outlets for that intensity.
Precisely. Now, another fascinating concept Greene explores is generational shifts. The idea that each generation has a distinct mindset shaped by the events and trends of their time.
It's about recognizing those recurring patterns and seeing how they play out in the present day.
Greene says it's important to understand the spirit of your generation, those shared values and aspirations. By tapping into that spirit, we can make a real difference in the world.
It's about understanding our place in history and how our generation is contributing to the future. And finally, Greene tackles one of the most profound aspects of the human experience, our awareness of mortality. It's not exactly a cheerful topic, but he suggests that facing our mortality can actually be empowering.
It's about shifting our perspective from fear to gratitude, appreciating the present moment, and making the most of the time we have.
Embracing the impermanence of everything and living each day to the fullest.
It's a profound shift in perspective. It can transform our relationship with time, with ourselves, and with the world around us.
Greene's work really highlights the paradoxical nature of human nature. We're capable of such incredible things, but we also have these darker impulses.
It's about finding that balance, recognizing both the light and the shadow within ourselves.
Greene gives us the tools to understand those forces that drive us and use that understanding to create a life that's more meaningful and fulfilling.
It's a journey of self-discovery, a continual process of growth and evolution. And while it's not always easy, it's certainly a journey worth taking. And it's a journey we're all on, together, whether we realize it or not. One of the things I really appreciated about Greene's book is this emphasis on observation as a key to understanding human nature. He talks about going beyond just listening to what people say and really tuning into those nonverbal cues. It's like he's encouraging us to become detectives of human behavior.
Right. Looking for those subtle hints that reveal what's really going on beneath the surface. It's about reading between the lines, seeing if someone's actions match their words.
He suggests establishing a baseline for each person we interact with, observing their usual expressions, their gestures, how they speak. Once we have that baseline, we can start to notice those deviations, those moments when something feels different.
Like if someone's usually very outgoing and suddenly becomes withdrawn, that could be a sign that something's up.
Exactly. It's about picking up on those subtle energy shifts, those tiny micro-expressions that can reveal a lot about a person's true feelings. Greene even gives some tips for improving our observational skills.
Like what?
Well, he suggests focusing on one specific nonverbal cue at a time, maybe eye contact or posture, and just really pay attention to how it changes in different situations. It's amazing what you can learn by simply observing.
It really makes you realize how much communication happens below the level of consciousness.
Yeah.
We're constantly sending and receiving signals.
And the more we understand those signals, the better we become at navigating our social world. Greene also has some interesting things to say about impression management, how we consciously try to shape the way others see us.
So it's about being strategic about the image we project, putting our best foot forward, but in a way that feels authentic.
Exactly. He talks about the importance of projecting confidence, being genuine, having a sense of purpose. We can do this through our nonverbal communication, the stories we tell about ourselves, and by making sure our actions align with our values.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Between presenting ourselves in a positive light and still staying true to who we are.
One of the most valuable things I took away from Greene's book is his emphasis on character. He argues that our character is the foundation for everything else in our lives.
It's like the bedrock upon which we build our relationships, our careers, our sense of self.
And Greene believes we have more control over our character than we often think. While our early experiences certainly shape us, he stresses that we can actively work on developing our character through conscious effort and practice.
So it's not about trying to become someone else, but about becoming the best version of ourselves.
Right. He talks about cultivating virtues like courage, resilience, self-control, setting small goals, practicing mindfulness, and seeking out mentors who embody the qualities we admire. It's a lifelong journey, but it's essential for living a truly meaningful life.
One thing that surprised me was Greene's take on mortality. It's not exactly a topic most people want to dwell on, but he suggests that facing our own mortality can actually be liberating.
He introduces this ancient philosophy called memento mori, which means remember that you will die. It's about using that awareness of our own finitude to appreciate the preciousness of life.
It's a powerful reminder that our time is limited. We don't have forever to chase our dreams and make our mark on the world.
Greene suggests doing things like visualizing your own death, writing your own eulogy, or thinking about the legacy you want to leave behind. It might sound morbid, but he argues that these practices can help us live more fully and authentically in the present moment.
It's about shifting our focus from fear to gratitude, from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future to appreciating the gift of life right now.
Greene also delves into the concept of compulsive behavior, suggesting that our character, often shaped by our early experiences, can lead us to repeat certain actions and fall into predictable patterns.
He emphasizes that people rarely do something just once. Their actions offer a glimpse into their character, and that character tends to remain remarkably consistent over time.
For example, if someone betrays your trust, there's a good chance they might do it again. Their actions are a reflection of their nature.
So it's not about giving people endless second chances, but being aware of those patterns and making informed decisions about who we trust.
Exactly. It's about seeing people clearly, without illusions. And it's also about understanding our own ingrained patterns, those self-sabotaging behaviors that hold us back. Once we recognize them, we can start to break free.
Greene also offers some fascinating insights into persuasion. He argues that to influence someone, we first need to understand their desires and then find a way to tap into those desires.
He talks about becoming an elusive object of desire, creating a sense of mystery, a sense of scarcity, to make ourselves more appealing. It's like that marketing tactic of the limited time offer.
Oh, absolutely. Create that sense of urgency, that fear of missing out, and people are more likely to act.
Greene suggests we can apply these same principles in our personal and professional lives. It's about understanding the psychology of desire and using it to our advantage.
And he also talks about the importance of reducing resistance by confirming people's self-perceptions. Remember those three universal aspects of self-opinion: autonomy, intelligence, and goodness.
Right. We all have that deep need to feel in control, to be seen as intelligent, and to believe we're good people.
And when someone challenges those beliefs, we naturally push back,
So to persuade someone, Greene suggests affirming those beliefs, make them feel smart, capable, virtuous. It's about creating a win-win situation.
where everyone feels good about themselves and the decisions they're making.
Exactly. He gives some really clever tactics for doing this, like asking for advice, mirroring someone's language, framing requests in a way that appeals to their higher motives. It's a subtle art, but it can be incredibly effective.
I really appreciated Greene's emphasis on confronting our shadow side, those parts of ourselves that we tend to hide from.
He calls it the shadow, that hidden realm of repressed impulses and desires that we try to keep buried.
It's that part of us that we're ashamed of, that we don't want to admit exists.
But Greene argues that denying the shadow only makes it stronger. We need to bring it into the light of awareness so we can deal with it.
He talks about recognizing the signs of the shadow at work. Maybe we act out of character, our darker impulses surface, or we project our negativity onto others.
He suggests things like journaling, dream analysis, even creative pursuits as ways to integrate the shadow, to find healthy ways to express those repressed emotions.
It's about becoming more whole, more accepting of all parts of ourselves, even the ones we don't like.
And this ties into his discussion of envy and grandiosity, two powerful forces that can really derail us if we let them.
Envy comes from that comparison game, right?
Mhm.
When we look at others and feel like we're not enough.
Exactly. And when those feelings of inadequacy take over, they can lead to resentment and even sabotage. Greene gives some great advice for dealing with envy. He suggests focusing on our strengths, celebrating the successes of others, finding ways to collaborate rather than compete.
It's about shifting from that scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance, realizing there's enough success to go around for everyone.
And grandiosity is that inflated sense of self-importance that can lead to arrogance and bad decisions.
It's like the classic story of Icarus flying too close to the sun.
Right. Greene points out the signs of grandiosity over confidence, a disdain for authority, that inability to handle criticism.
So it's important to stay humble, to acknowledge our limits, to be open to feedback.
And to find healthy ways to channel that ambition, set big goals, push ourselves, but do it with a sense of humility and perspective.
Now, of course, we can't talk about human nature without talking about love. And Greene has some really interesting things to say about the irrationality of love.
He suggests that we often fall in love with our projections, with those idealized images of the perfect partner, rather than seeing the real person standing right in front of us.
He calls these projections the anima and animus, and they often stem from our early relationships with our parents.
Like a man might unconsciously seek a partner who embodies qualities of his mother, while a woman might be drawn to a man who reminds her of her father.
And when those projections collide with reality, that's when the problems start.
Exactly. Disillusionment, conflict, heartbreak. Greene gives these fascinating examples like the elusive woman of perfection or the superior man. These are the archetypes we often chase after in love.
So it's about recognizing our projections, seeing our partners for who they really are, flaws and all.
Embracing the messiness of love and realizing that relationships are a journey, not a destination. Now, Greene's book also got me thinking about the power of purpose. that innate drive we all have to find meaning and direction in our lives.
He argues that we're all wired for purpose, but finding it requires tapping into those things that truly light us up, those things that we're naturally drawn to.
He calls them our primal inclinations, those things that captivated us as children, those activities we could lose ourselves in for hours.
It's about reconnecting with that passion, that sense of excitement that makes us feel truly alive.
Greene talks about setting clear goals, breaking them down into manageable steps, and finding ways to overcome obstacles.
He also talks about the importance of immersing ourselves in our work, finding those activities that challenge us, that push us to grow, that make us feel engaged and fulfilled.
It's about creating a life that aligns with our values, our passions, our unique talents, making a contribution to the world that feels meaningful and authentic.
I was also fascinated by Greene's insights into group dynamics, the way we're influenced by the energy of groups.
He calls it the social force, this invisible energy field that connects people and shapes our perceptions and behavior.
We've all felt that, haven't we? Being swept up in the energy of a crowd at a concert or a sporting event.
Greene points out that this social force can be a double-edged sword. It can inspire incredible acts of courage and generosity, but it can also lead to mob mentality and destructive behavior.
He warns about the dangers of conformity, the pressure to conform to the group, that tendency to just go along with the crowd without thinking critically.
So to counteract those negative influences, we need to develop our critical thinking skills, question assumptions, and be willing to stand up for what we believe in, even if it means going against the grain.
It's about finding that balance between belonging to a group and maintaining our own individuality and sense of integrity.
And this leads us to the topic of leadership. Greene argues that effective leadership isn't about wielding power, but understanding the complex dynamics between leaders and followers.
He makes a distinction between authority, which is earned through competence and integrity, and power, which often relies on force or manipulation.
True leaders inspire trust and respect, while those who rely on power create resentment and resistance.
So it's not about commanding or controlling others, but about inspiring and empowering them.
Exactly. Greene outlines the key elements of effective leadership: having a clear vision, being adaptable, empowering others, and fostering a culture of collaboration and trust.
He gives some inspiring examples of leaders who embody these qualities and achieve great things.
And Greene also explores the realm of aggression, which is often seen as a negative force, but he argues that it can be a powerful tool for achieving our goals as long as it's channeled effectively.
So it's about controlled aggression, not destructive aggression.
Right. Using that energy and drive to overcome obstacles, to push ourselves further, but without harming others. He gives practical advice for managing our own aggression and dealing with aggression from others.
Things like learning to recognize our triggers, setting clear boundaries, and practicing assertive communication.
And also finding healthy outlets for that energy, channeling it into creative pursuits, physical challenges, or anything that allows us to express that intensity in a positive way.
Another fascinating aspect of Greene's book is his exploration of generational shifts, how each generation has the unique mindset shaped by the events and trends of their time.
It's about recognizing those patterns, understanding how different generations view the world, and finding ways to bridge those gaps.
Greene says it's important to understand the spirit of your generation, those shared values and aspirations that define who you are as a collective.
And by tapping into that spirit, you can make a real contribution to the world. He also encourages us to connect with people from different generations, to learn from their experiences, and to find common ground based on shared values and goals.
And finally, Greene tackles the topic of mortality. It's not something most of us like to think about, but he suggests that confronting our own mortality can be a powerful catalyst for living a more meaningful life.
It's about shifting our perspective from fear to gratitude, from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, to appreciating the present moment and making the most of the time we have.
It's about recognizing the impermanence of life and embracing each experience as if it were our last.
It's a profound shift in perspective that can transform our relationship with time, with ourselves, and with the world around us. It's a perspective that can really change how we approach life, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Living with more intention, more presence, more appreciation for the gift of being alive. Greene also talks about this idea of decoding human behavior through nonverbal communication.
It's almost like learning a secret language, picking up on those subtle cues that people give off, even when they don't realize it.
He talks about establishing a baseline for each person we interact with, paying attention to their typical expressions, their gestures, their tone of voice.
Once we have that baseline, we can start to notice those deviations, those moments when their behavior shifts, and it might signal a change in their emotional state or a difference between what they're saying and what they're really feeling.
It's like becoming a human lie detector, but maybe more compassionate version.
Right. It's about understanding those unspoken messages, reading between the lines.
He even gives some tips for improving those observational skills.
Like focusing on one specific nonverbal cue at a time, like eye contact or body language, and just really paying attention to how it changes in different contexts.
I love that idea. It's like a mindfulness exercise for social interaction.
It really is. And Greene also talks about impression management, how we consciously try to shape the way others perceive us.
So it's about putting our best foot forward, but in a way that's genuine and aligned with our values.
Exactly. He talks about projecting confidence, authenticity, and a sense of purpose. And we can do this through our nonverbal communication, the stories we tell about ourselves, and by making sure our actions match our words.
It's about being intentional with the image we project to the world, but not in a manipulative way. More like aligning our outer expression with our inner truth.
Right. It's about being the best version of ourselves and letting that shine through. Now, one of the most impactful parts of Greene's book, for me at least, was his emphasis on character.
He talks about character being the foundation of everything else in our life, our relationships, our careers, our overall well-being.
And he suggests that we have more control over our character than we might think. While our early experiences shape us, we can actively work on developing our character through conscious effort and practice.
So it's like character is something we can cultivate, like a garden.
Exactly. We can choose to nurture the virtues we want, to embody things like courage, resilience, self-discipline.
He talks about setting small goals, practicing mindfulness, surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us. It's a lifelong journey.
And it's a journey worth taking because ultimately our character determines the quality of our lives.
Now, one of the most thought-provoking parts of Greene's book was his exploration of mortality. It's not a topic most people enjoy thinking about, but he suggests that confronting our own mortality can actually be incredibly empowering.
He introduces this ancient philosophy called memento mori, which means remember that you will die.
It sounds a bit morbid, but the idea is that remembering our own impermanence can help us appreciate the present moment and live with more intention.
Exactly. Greene suggests doing things like visualizing your own death or writing your own eulogy. It might seem a bit strange, but he argues that these practices can help us gain clarity about what truly matters in life.
It's about shifting our perspective from fear to gratitude, from obsessing over the past or worrying about the future to really savoring the present moment.
It's a powerful way to live. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into Robert Greene's The Concise Laws of Human Nature, I thought it would be helpful to give our listeners a condensed version of the key takeaways, a sort of cheat sheet for navigating the complexities of human behavior.
Yeah, that's a great idea. A toolbox of insights to help us understand ourselves and others better.
So the first key takeaway is recognizing that our behavior is often driven by unconscious forces. Things like evolutionary programming, ingrained patterns, and those hidden biases we talked about. Awareness is the first step toward taking control.
It's like shining a light on those blind spots, bringing those unconscious influences into conscious awareness.
The second key takeaway is mastering irrationality. Cultivating rationality by understanding our biases, managing our emotional reactions, and strengthening our thinking abilities. It's about becoming more aware of those triggers that send us spiraling and developing strategies for responding in a more skillful way.
So less reacting, more responding.
The third takeaway is transforming narcissism. Greene suggests we all have some degree of narcissism, but it's about understanding the difference between healthy self-love and the kind of deep narcissism that can be destructive in relationships. It's about learning to channel that self-love into empathy, which is a powerful tool for connection and influence.
It's about shifting our focus outward, becoming more attuned to the needs and perspectives of others.
The fourth takeaway is the importance of decoding nonverbal cues. Greene encourages us to go beyond words and become keen observers of body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice. It's about learning to read those subtle signals that people give off, often unconsciously, to gain a deeper understanding of their true thoughts and feelings.
It's like becoming fluent in the silent language of human interaction.
The fifth takeaway is the power of character. Greene argues that our character, shaped by our early experiences, plays a significant role in our behavior patterns. He talks about looking for those recurring themes in how people act, how they handle adversity, how they treat others. These patterns can reveal a lot about their character, and understanding character can help us make more informed decisions about our relationships and interactions.
It's about seeing people clearly, recognizing those patterns and understanding how those patterns might impact our lives.
The sixth takeaway is the art of stimulating desire. Greene delves into the psychology of desire, suggesting that we're often drawn to what we lack, to what's scarce or mysterious. He talks about the power of strategic absence, of creating a sense of intrigue and leaving people wanting more. This can be applied in our personal lives, in our creative endeavors, even in marketing and branding.
It's about understanding how to pique people's curiosity, how to make ourselves and our offerings more appealing.
The seventh takeaway is cultivating a far-sighted perspective. Greene encourages us to detach from the immediacy of our emotions, to broaden our perspective, and to consider the long-term consequences of our actions. It's about developing that strategic vision, that ability to see beyond the present moment and make decisions that align with our long-term goals.
It's about playing the long game, not just reacting to what's right in front of us.
The eighth takeaway is taming defensiveness. Greene argues that people become defensive when their self-image is threatened. He highlights those three universal aspects of self-perception: autonomy, intelligence, and goodness. To effectively influence someone, we need to confirm those perceptions, make them feel safe, intelligent, and capable. It's about creating an environment of mutual respect and understanding.
It's about meeting people where they are, honoring their need to feel good about themselves, and then guiding them toward a new perspective.
The ninth takeaway is confronting the shadow. Greene talks about the shadow as those repressed aspects of our personality that we often try to hide, even from ourselves. He argues that it's important to acknowledge and integrate our shadow side, to bring those hidden impulses into the light of awareness. This can be a challenging process, but it can ultimately lead to greater wholeness and authenticity.
It's about embracing all parts of ourselves, the light and the shadow, and finding ways to express those shadow elements in a healthy and constructive way.
And the 10th takeaway is living with memento mori, remembering that our time is limited. Greene encourages us to embrace our mortality as a way to appreciate the preciousness of life and to live with more intention and purpose. It's about shifting our perspective from fear to gratitude, from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future to savoring the present moment and making the most of the time we have.
It's a powerful reminder to live each day to the fullest and to focus on what truly matters in life.
So there you have it, 10 key takeaways from Robert Greene's The Concise Laws of Human Nature, a roadmap for understanding ourselves and others better, for navigating the complexities of human interaction, and for creating a life that's aligned with our deepest values and aspirations.
It's been a fascinating exploration, and I hope you've enjoyed our deep dive into this complex and intriguing subject.
I have, and I encourage our listeners to keep exploring these ideas, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing.
Until next time, keep diving deep.